Good afternoon and welcome to Sky Sports News. As the Premier League, Football League and Women's Super League is suspended until April the 3rd due to coronavirus. We'll be live to Premier League headquarters in just a moment. Well, Celtic trained this morning, but since then all Scottish football has also been shut down. But despite the outbreak, the Cheltenham Festival goes ahead as thousands arrive for the final day of racing. Yeah, but we start with that news that all Premier League and English Football League and Women's Super League matches have been postponed until April the 3rd at the earliest. Meetings were held this morning in response to the escalating coronavirus pandemic. Now, Watford cancelled their training yesterday after several members of the squad reported feeling unwell. They also have one player awaiting to hear results of a coronavirus test. This morning, Nigel Pearson criticised Boris Johnson for showing a lack of leadership after the Prime Minister decided sporting events could go ahead as planned.
I don't think we had any great leadership last night. Listening to the Prime Minister, I was totally underwhelmed by the lack of leadership and clear message in terms of what was said in that press conference. I think it's important that we are trying to be proactive ourselves, and I think what is very important is that hopefully the Premier League will make strong decisions based on what is right for everybody within the game. We told all the players to stay at home, indeed all the technical staff as well, all the training ground staff. So, we've done that as a precautionary measure because we've currently got one player who's been awaiting test results on his symptoms. We currently don't have anybody with a positive return of a result. But I think it's in the current climate, it's pretty inevitable that we all will have contact with somebody who either has the virus or has possibly even recovered from it.
We are going to be live to Premier League headquarters shortly, but the EFL have also postponed all matches until April the 3rd. We're going to go live now to Alan Myers. Alan, just talk us through the events of this morning.
Yes, well, Tom, we obviously woke up this morning to the action from last night when we heard about Mikel Arteta first, then Chelsea's Hudson-Odoi this morning, and then of course everyone was waiting to hear, and around, well, it was on 11 o'clock when we heard from here the EFL House with that collective statement on behalf of pretty much all of football in this country. And this is what the Director of Communications here at the EFL, Mark Rowan, had to say.
The FA, Premier League, EFL, Barclays FA Women's Super League and FA Women's Championship have collectively agreed to postpone the professional game in England until the 3rd of April at the earliest. This action, which will be kept under constant review, has been taken due to the increasing number of clubs taking steps to isolate their players and staff because of the Covid-19 virus. The postponements include all matches in the Championship, League One and League Two, as well as academy and youth team fixtures. In addition, EFL clubs are being advised to suspend indefinitely all non-essential activities, which include, but are not limited to, player appearances, training ground visits and fan meetings. Whilst the EFL board has continued to take the advice and guidance offered by the government and its health advisors, emerging developments mean now is the time to implement football's contingency plans in response to the crisis. A further update on those plans will be given post an EFL board meeting next week. This decision has not been taken lightly, but the EFL must prioritise the health and well-being of players, staff and supporters, while also acknowledging the government's national efforts in tackling this outbreak.
So So there we go, that's the news that came out, dramatic news of course, because all of football will be suspended until that date, the April the 3rd, when Blackburn are due to play Leeds United at Ellen Road. That will be the next game at this point to take place, but as the statement said, that can change. Now the ramifications of this of course are many, you know, especially for EFL clubs, League 1 clubs, League 2 clubs, financially. And we've already heard from the Tranmere Rovers chairman Mark Palios, who's acted really quickly this morning to say that any of the games that have been suspended during that time, people will get immediate refund on that. Now that will have an impact on clubs who in most cases work from week to week, month to month. You know, of course, the big Premier League clubs will be able to take this suspension, but some of the smaller clubs who and not just the clubs as well, the surrounding businesses around football, around a Saturday or whatever, a Sunday afternoon, you know, that will be a huge impact on those businesses. So the ramifications we're still not clear on. They'll come in the next few days, of course, as people take this information in and see where they go from there.
Alan, thank you. So that's the EFL. Let's get to the Premier League headquarters as promised, because meetings were held this morning in response to the escalating corona pandemic. Let's go live to our chief reporter, Brian Swanson. Brian, what can you tell us about this?
Well, Tom, that emergency meeting here at the Premier League headquarters has now finished. It was a quick decision to fall in line with the rest of English football and announce that suspension until at least April the 4th, that weekend of that. Premier League Chief Executive Richard Masters still in Cyber, hoping to hear from him shortly about that decision. Aston Villa's Chief Executive Christian Purslow left here into the media scrum. He praised the decision, didn't want to say too much as he headed through the scrum towards a taxi, but he did say that he didn't know when ultimately this season will finish, because nobody does know. What is happening around the UK, what is happening around the world right now is unprecedented, and English football no doubt felt that they had to respond in this way by suspending all elite football, at least for the next 3 weeks. That does buy a bit of time to establish exactly where this is going. The Premier League had previously followed the advice of the government and the Chief Health Officer in deciding initially last night that all fixtures would go ahead, but then Mikel Arteta's positive test for coronavirus really changed everything, and that forced them into this emergency meeting. And what happened was the quick decision was made. The overwhelming majority of English football's top club officials met via video conference. On the phone, it was just Purslow that was in person along with Richard Masters. Inevitably, still plenty of questions for people in the game to answer. The Premier League will feel that they have been as decisive as they can be given the circumstances, but they know as well as anyone that still the future is uncertain, not least going into next Tuesday's UEFA meeting, where there will be a decision on whether Euro 2020 will, as is expected, be postponed for another year.
Brian, thank you. Haven't been to Scotland yet because the Scottish FA have suspended all domestic football until further notice. Charles Patterson is at Celtic's training ground. And Charles, this is a really interesting one, because this morning, Celtic, it seemed like business was as usual for them. Very different now.
Yeah, Tom, that's right. Celtic's players were training here this morning. Of course, the Old Firm game was scheduled to take place on Sunday, and indeed there were actually fixtures due to be played this evening, including Motherwell against Aberdeen at Fir Park. But in the last hour, the joint response group, which is made up with the SFA and SPFL, released a statement where they confirmed the suspension of all domestic, professional and grassroots football under the jurisdiction of the Scottish FA until further notice. There is no date set, unlike in England, of the 3rd of April, 4th of April, for the EFL and the Premier League. It is until further notice in Scotland, so they're not putting a date on it. And of course, the game tonight, Motherwell against Aberdeen, is off. Queen of the South were due to play Ayr United in the Scottish Championship. That has gone as well. And so Essentially, it is now a suspension in Scotland, and it could be for many, many weeks. They're not wanting to put a date on it. They were following government advice, of course, at the SPFL and SFA. They were monitoring the situation closely. I understand, speaking to people very close to the SPFL board, they were waiting to see what came out of that Premier League meeting and the EFL meeting. And then, of course, their reaction here in Scotland was very, very quick. We are, though, due to hear from Neil Lennon around about 1 o'clock. Celtic's press conference today will go ahead, despite the fact that the fixture at Ibrox is off. Rangers' press conference has been cancelled today, so we will not be hearing from Steven Gerrard, although we did hear from him last night extensively on the subject after Rangers lost to Bayer Leverkusen in the Europa League. That game, that second leg of that tie, has been postponed, of course. Rangers will not be travelling to Germany next week, so that tie is totally up in the air. But in terms of Scottish football, well, until the foreseeable future, there will be no football in Scotland, and we await to see what the SFA and SPFL do next. Just to give you quick words from SFA Chief Executive Ian Maxwell, he said that since the guidance outlined by governments last night, we've been engaged in extensive dialogue to clarify the position and guidance for Scottish football. The announcement has been made in the interests of public health and equally the health and safety of players, which is of paramount importance. And Neil Doncaster, the SPFL Chief Executive, he has said that the health and safety of fans, players and officials is paramount. We've not yet had any confirmed cases of coronavirus amongst players in Scotland, but given the nature of this outbreak, it seems to be only a matter of time. So that is the situation here in Scotland. Until further notice, there will be no football played at professional level or grassroots football, and we'll be getting the reaction of Neil Lennon just after 1 o'clock to this.